It was just past 5 a.m. when the nightmare began. The tranquility of my ranch, which I had meticulously maintained for decades, was shattered by the sound of heavy pounding on my front door. Outside, the HOA's so-called cops were attempting yet another audacious escalation. They had arrived with the apparent intent to forcibly enter my home under the pretense of authority, having convinced themselves that my refusal to comply with HOA demands constituted some kind of legal violation. Their confidence, as always, far exceeded their understanding of ownership and jurisdiction. I had been expecting conflict, but nothing could have fully prepared me for the sheer boldness of an early morning home invasion. My security systems immediately activated. Motion sensors tripped, cameras focused on the intruders, and drones quietly hovered outside, capturing their faces, movements, and license plates. Ranger barked furiously, positioning himself at strategic entry points, but this time, I knew that brute physical deterrence would not be enough. The situation required a direct, immediate human intervention. Enter my son. He had recently returned from an intense MMA training camp, his physique, agility, and combat skills honed to perfection. The timing could not have been more fortuitous. While the HOA cops believed they were intimidating a lone property owner, they were unaware that my son had arrived earlier that morning for a personal check-in and was now strategically positioned behind the reinforced door. As the pounding intensified, my son calmly moved into position. He had trained for scenarios far more dangerous than any HOA harassment attempt, and his demeanor was entirely professional, entirely controlled. The intruders, however, did not know what they were about to face. When they finally tried to breach the door, expecting a meek property owner, they were met with precise physical resistance and the unmistakable presence of a highly trained fighter. Doors were reinforced, locks secured, and any attempt to force entry triggered the immediate alarm system, which simultaneously broadcast live video feeds to local law enforcement, ensuring legal protection while escalating the psychological pressure. Inside, I observed the scene via live feeds. My son engaged in a controlled but formidable defense, using leverage, positioning, and intimidation tactics honed over years of MMA training to contain and immobilize the intruders without causing permanent harm. He expertly redirected the momentum of their attempts, ensuring that each move was countered efficiently. Meanwhile, my team of security personnel coordinated movements, locking down secondary entrances and monitoring perimeters with drones, cameras, and sensors. Ranger added additional psychological pressure, barking and moving strategically to create the impression of total control. Karen and the HOA's team were in complete shock. They had anticipated a weak, compliant property owner, perhaps someone who would be frightened into submission. Instead, they were confronted with overwhelming physical authority, strategic preparation, and real-time documentation of every action. My son maintained strict professional control, simultaneously recording interactions, capturing facial recognition footage, and communicating with legal counsel to ensure that any escalation would be documented and enforceable. As the morning unfolded, the HOA's intruders realized that they had gravely underestimated their opposition. Every attempt to breach, intimidate, or assert authority failed spectacularly. Drone footage captured the chaos from above, while the security system recorded all audio and video, providing irrefutable evidence for legal action. The HOA had not only failed to gain entry, they had publicly documented their trespass, harassment, and overreach, all under controlled circumstances. By mid-morning, the HOA retreated, humiliated and unable to claim any moral or legal high ground. Notices were later issued detailing the trespass, harassment, and attempted home invasion, complete with video evidence and timestamps. Any future attempt to enter my property without permission would result in immediate arrest, financial penalties, and additional legal action. The lesson was unmistakable. Audacity without understanding the full scope of authority and preparedness carries severe consequences. Reflecting on the incident, I recognized that this confrontation represented a turning point in the HOA saga. From fence disputes and lakeside conflicts to stolen vehicles and tree-cutting claims, every prior encounter had built toward the capacity for decisive, overwhelming response. This morning's events demonstrated that preparation, documentation, and strategically trained personnel could neutralize even the most aggressive attempts at coercion. Standing on the porch afterward, watching the intruders retreat and ranger patrol the perimeter, I understood the broader lesson. My property, my rules, and my family's protection were absolute. Any attempt at interference would be met with professional, enforceable, and overwhelming force. Karen and her HOA had once again learned that on my ranch, audacity has consequences, preparation is power, and overreach is met with immediate and decisive action. The morning's confrontation had not only secured my home, it had delivered a permanent, undeniable message. Trespassers, regardless of perceived authority, would be swiftly and effectively countered.